This one time in Italy, my family ate pizza for 3.5 days, morning, noon, and night. That's right, 12 meals in a row. An incredible, if senseless, feat by any standard. So how does one go about finding 12 pizzerias in Naples to make the 12 meal series worth those calories? Believe it or not, finding perfect dough, cheese, sauce alchemy in Old Napoli can indeed take more than a stone's throw. This tale is one of kismet and or sheer luck. I was leaving Barcelona for Naples on a Friday evening and had scheduled lunch with a restaurateur friend from New York on Friday afternoon. It turned out that this associate had just flown in from where else but Naples the night before. It also turned out that this associate had been in Naples to meet with who else but the guy who pens a yearly roundup of the best pizzas in all of Italy and chief among his cities, Naples. Alberto was the pizza guru I never knew I needed. Based on Alberto's latest list of places not to miss, we ate the best of the best in pizza's spiritual homeland. We ate classic margherita pizza. We ate surprisingly cheeseless marinara pizza. We ate fried pizza and we ate dessert pizza. We ate small pizza and gigantic pizza, traditional and avant-garde pizza. People, we ate flawless pizza. The four of us. Over 90 hours, 30 pies. And nobody said it couldn't be done. My name is Howie Southworth. I travel, I eat, I cook, and then I write fancy words about all of it. My cookbooks are loaded with wild stories and fabulous bites, and I've shared plenty of my own adventures. But now, I want to hear somebody else's for a change. Sauced in Translation is a timely podcast spanning the globe of food, spinning tales of lavish meals and epic gastronomic failure. Join us for some well-deserved armchair globetrotting. Let's get saucy. My guest today is Stephanie Bonner. Stephanie is the modern model of a scrappy content creator living and hustling her way through New York City. Highly trained actor, part-time director, aspiring writer, promising producer, and lifelong goofball. One can easily search her up on IMDb for the laundry list of acclaim and accomplishments, but to my mind, the most important tidbit comes from Stephanie's own website, which notes that she can often be found, quote, dancing around the kitchen pretending to be the host of her very own cooking show. Now that strikes a chord. Here's our chat. Stephanie, speaking of food and drink, you and I met over baby bottles filled with red wine, no?
We did. We did, didn't we? Which was weird.
Not something that everybody gets to say.
It's so true. And that was at ITV, right? But was it but where? I can't remember the event. There were so many random events and
I remember like it was yesterday. This was the Independent Television and Film Festival, the ITV Fest in Vermont back in 2014. You were there as the cast of a web series called Mythos.
Yeah.
And I was a early fanboy, and I was there. I was there screening the original iteration of Sauced in Translation, a web series where I cooked American food across China. And we were in a tent opening reception sponsored by a company, a production company, Mom Cave. And Mom Cave brought a bunch of baby bottles and filled them with red wine to ply us. And it was awesome. And it worked. I was standing in the tent. I remember as if it was its own film. Open the doors, out swings the cast of Mythos. And my jaw dropped and the rest is history because I got to know each and every one of you.
Each and every weird one of us.
Well, Mythos, you all played like gods and goddesses, right?
Yeah.
That's got to do something to your ego.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Did it stick? Also, speaking of food and drink, I normally start this part of the conversation with folks, about the Corona times and how our food lives have been upended because we can't travel and we're all home so much. But according to a very active social media presence, you've been all over the map. What's up with that?
I have, with COVID in the winter, we in New York City, indoor dining closed in January. So we lost our jobs again. So the second time it was sort of like, what are we going to do? Like, sitting in like, I feel like the first shutdown, we didn't lose too much of our minds being locked in a room together because we have an outdoor space, but it's been such a cold winter that we kind of decided to pack up the car and take a road trip. So we traveled out towards Vegas, and I'm from California. So initially we kind of thought we might travel towards California, but California was in such a rough place where they were on their second like shutdown.
Yep.
So we skipped California. But we went from New York City, we went south, and then we went west, and then we went north, and we came back east.
Wow. And I don't often get to ask this question, particularly because I end up talking to most people about what they've done in their own home and what they've learned to cook and banana bread and sourdough and all that good business.
Right.
But where was the best stop along this map? And where did you eat? And what did you eat?
We never had any plans. So we were just sort of going how the wind took us, we would
hold on a second. Who's we?
Oh, me and my fiance and our dog.
That sounds like a Seinfeld episode. You were forced to say, You didn't say Corey. You said, my fiance. Have you met my fiance? My fiance. This is my fiance. Oh, fiance.
My fiance, Corey.
Can you bring me some more champagne, please?
Yeah. That's actually the third beverage I have. I have my coffee, my water, and my champagne.
Well, it is 11:12 in the morning.
Absolutely. It's basically brunch. Yeah. So we never really had a plan. We just kind of like the day before we would make the plan for the next stop. And so we were in Nashville, and which we had great barbecue in Nashville. But as we were kind of making our way, I think we hit Hot Springs after Nashville, but we stopped in Memphis because we had Googled just what are the best lunch spots? Like, where should we go? The big hit among the Google and Yelp was this place called Elwood's Shack. And it is truly hard to find. There's not really a sign for it. You kind of drive along what feels like a main route, and it feels like it's like behind a Lowe's, or it's like in a Lowe's parking lot. So you just sort of drive. It's like there's a big gas station, there's a Lowe's, and then there's this tiny little storefront, and it's this like sandwich spot. It was so good. I had the best sandwich I've ever had.
Wow.
I think both of us did. We were both so shocked at how good it was. And everyone was so friendly. And it was so funny. I walked in, and, with COVID, we were obviously so cautious about like, what do we do? So like, I walked in, and they had outdoor seating, and, you order at a counter. I was looking at the menu. It's a big menu. So that was very overwhelming, and also kind of scary when you see too large of a menu. You're like, is this going to be good? I told him, so I looked at it, and then he basically circled all of the things that he thought I should order. He's like, this is the best, this is the best, this is the best. And then he asked me where I was from, and I was like, oh, I'm a New Yorker. And so we had a big laugh, because we had a whole laugh about sweet tea versus like in the South versus like up North. And
typical conversation. Very typical. Oh yeah. Where do you fall on the sweet spectrum? Right.
Yeah. Well, I ordered sweet tea because I thought it was only fair. And then, we got these two sandwiches, and it was I don't even know how to explain how good it was. Like, the bread was so good. The filling was everything was so good. I got a po' boy, and Corey I don't know what Corey got. We can't remember what it was called or what was in it. It was like andouille sausage. It was delicious. And he told me it was going to be the best lunch I've ever had. And he was right.
Best sandwich of your life is a huge, huge statement.
And I'm a sandwich person. Like, sandwiches are my thing.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, so you could be a judge of not only ingredients, but in my case, I judge a place more on structure.
Yeah.
It keeps itself intact as you're eating it. And that's as important, or if not more important, than the stuff on the inside of the breads. Now, let me ask you, this best sandwich of your life, to quote you, how did it hold up structurally?
The sandwich totally fell apart.
Oh, so see that would have taken it off my list.
I see, that doesn't bother me. I guess, like, if it's good and the ingredients were so good and the bread was really good, but the bread tasted so fresh, like when you get that fresh bread that like it's sometimes a little too, like it's not crunchy enough or it's not stiff enough to hold the ingredients in. That's kind of what it was like. It felt like just freshly baked bread with, I really wish I could remember what was in it. It was like pulled pork. It was so good. It was so good.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, I would say if that were me, that may have been one of the best meals of my life. But if I had to run and get a fork, it ceases to be a sandwich. You understand what I'm saying, right? So
I do. I just use my hands.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I'm sure is not like the
But
most
you would agree, and maybe you would disagree, but I think that you would agree that if you were to take a bare hand and go and grab some pulled pork off of your platter, that your sandwich experience ended minutes ago.
Because it's no longer a sandwich. It's a platter.
Aha.
I see what you're saying.
Right. To honor the Earl of Sandwich, right, who created, by folklore, created this thing when he asked for 2 pieces of bread to keep his hands clean so he can continue to play cards. If he were to have grabbed a piece of pulled pork, he would have marked the cards and been killed probably, because in that day you were killed if you cheated, right? I'm making that up.
Yeah. But what do you think about, like when you eat something, like let's say a burger, and like when you bite into it and it's so juicy that it just like drips down? Like what if the sandwich is still intact, but it's just juicy?
Okay. That's a very, very good question. I think, all right, so the sandwich itself is intact, but for the materials that are now dripping down your arms.
Yeah.
Okay. So that part is on the eater. That is a master tactician, such as myself, with a sandwich would rotate when I acknowledge where it was most likely to breach. You see? So if I'm paying attention to my sandwich, I'm an active participant in the activity of eating the sandwich. I can rotate and see where it's about to pour, and then go to there. It's like an ice cream cone. If you think about the analogy being an ice cream cone,
absolutely,
you don't willingly let an ice cream cone drip down the cone, the ice cream drip down the cone. You actively turn it and lick, right? So if you're actively turning the sandwich as if it's an ice cream cone, you're never going to run into that. So I can say safely, Stephanie, I have no experience in that realm. And Elwood's, I assume that's in reference to the Blues Brothers. I mean, you were in Memphis.
Yes, we were in Memphis. That's how I gathered it.
And did you not go to Rendezvous?
We didn't actually spend any time in Memphis other than to grab lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had spent a couple of days in Nashville, and then we were driving through Memphis.
Yeah. One does not merely pop into Rendezvous because it's a very, very popular place, and you often have to wait multiple hours to get in. So it's not the lunch pop in.
That's the thing, not the lunch pop in. There were a couple other places similar on our drive, especially like those kind of barbecue, like any type of barbecue spot where it's like it's gone by 2 p.m.
Oh yeah, no, it's a common thing. But it sounds like you guys got lucky. The stars aligned, and you pulled into the Lowe's parking lot, and you got your fill of. And I will give this to you,
best sandwich ever.
Your best first couple of bites of sandwich in your life.
First couple of bites of sandwich ever. Okay, so I mean, even if it's not a sandwich.
If you can recall the last time you left the country, do you recall what you ate?
The last time I left the country, I think I was in Greece. I think that was my last big trip. And I do remember what I ate. I mean, we ate so much. I was thinking of this as like it's so much of like Mediterranean food is just so different than what I'm really used to eating. So it's a lot of like the kind of meat on a stick, which is delicious. But we went to this one restaurant. We were in Naxos, I think.
Okay.
And we had just gone like kind of driven around the island. Naxos is a very quiet island. I don't know if you've ever been, but there's not a ton going on. There's like a kite surfing area, which is like what the big draw is of Naxos, I guess. So we were driving around, just kind of checking out the island, and we pulled into like, there's like an olive oil. I don't know, an olive oilery. What do you call an olive oil? Like a distillery? I don't know what you call it. Do you know what you call it?
I'm going to call it a squeezer.
Dispensary?
It's a squeezer.
Yeah, they were squeezing the olives. So we kind of checked that out. And then we saw this little restaurant. Would you call it a restaurant? It kind of felt like someone's house, but there was a menu. But it's all in Greek. Couldn't read it. But we walked up, and, it's like this big open space. And, they kind of asked me, did you want a table? And we said, sure. And we looked at the menu, but they were like, no, don't look at the menu. Like, come and look at the food. This older woman, she ushers us over. So basically she's just cooking. Like this kitchen is kind of like right in the open, and she's showing us everything that she's been making that day. And it was like, actually like rabbit, and there was all kinds of like vegetables. And so she was just like, like a lot of bread and like cheese. And she's just like, this is what I have. What pick what you want. She had like stuffed peppers. we're like, yeah, okay. So we just kind of like picked what we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
She's writing it down, and then we go sit back down, and then I don't know, like 15 minutes later, she brought it out. It was just so good. It was so like, I can't even tell you really what it was because I don't know what it was, but it was just like plates, and I'm pretty sure it was like a rabbit stew.
So my first comment is, you don't know how common it is when I talk to people about their more interesting travel food stories, that it starts with, we walked into what I thought was this woman's house.
Yeah.
It's a very common refrain, and it's a thematic, I think, around the world and in a lot of countries. The latest greatest I heard about that, it was in Italy, and this my guest talked about the fact that she walked into a room that above the door actually had an osteria sign that was not lit up. The neon was dead. And she walked in, and still I was convinced that it may have been that woman's house. So my next comment is really a question. So when you walk in and you see all these ingredients, you see that the rabbit, you see perhaps other proteins, you see a bunch of fresh vegetables, and it's all very beautiful because a lot of these places operate like that, right? This is what I found at the market today, and this is what I'm doing.
And this is what we're selling. Yeah.
Was the assumption that as you're picking these things out, that this cook was going to cook everything in its own dish, or was the assumption that she was going to put it all together in a thing?
So in its own, I assumed in its own dish, because some of it had already been kind of cooked as well. Like stuff that like she knew like that was going to take longer to cook. Like some of it was already kind of pre-made. The stuffed peppers were like, seemed like they had been pre-cooked. And I don't know what they were stuffed with, but it was delicious. She had eggplant, like stuff that I just kind of assumed was going to come in its own separate, which it did. It came on all sorts of different platters.
I have only been to Greece once, but I am a huge fan of eggplant. And to me, my 72 plus hours in Athens particularly was like a purple blur. It was a blur of eggplant because I could not get enough. Every permutation of eggplant I just consumed. Like we would sit down at a restaurant, and my wife and my kids would be like getting souvlaki and getting the pasticcio and all these things. And I go right to the eggplant section, and I'm like, I'm going to get the grilled and the stewed and the baked and the deep fried eggplant and the moussaka. And it was like a field day for eggplant lovers. Love, love, love. By the way, if allowed, I would never turn the topic from eggplant. I could go for hours and hours and hours. Turning the corner slightly, do you have a favorite travel food story to tell? And what is that?
I've sort of, thinking about it, it's like so much of like my travel is food centric. I feel like I center everything around food. So anytime I travel, it's less about, going to like places that that magazines talk about. It's more about asking locals what they like to eat and then trying to go there. New Orleans is really one of my favorite food stories. I was like in the Garden District, and it was just a really beautiful day. And I was with one of my closest friends, and we were wandering around, and we stumbled on this this sort of really beautiful, like elegant looking building. And I was just like, oh, let's just like see what it is. Like there was a patio and people were sitting outside. And I was like, let's just go in, And so we walked in, and it was a hotel. It was one of those really beautiful days. And so it just like, we sat outside and we got some drinks. I just remember I wasn't that hungry, but I wanted something to snack on, or like I wanted something small. And so I ordered a cup of gumbo because it seemed like the right thing at the time. So I ordered a cup of gumbo, and it was so good. It was so good. The server, I remember her name was Ashley, and she was so sweet. So I ordered a cup of gumbo, and it's like this tiny little cup. I devoured it. And then she comes back to bust the table. And I was just like, you know what, can I get another cup of gumbo? And she was like, oh, sure. I ordered 4 rounds of gumbo. I'm not even kidding. And to the point where she was just like, do you want to get a bowl of gumbo? You don't have to keep getting cups of gumbo. And I was like, no, because I kept thinking it was going to be the last one, but it was so good that I just kept eating it.
It's never the last bowl of gumbo. Come on.
Yeah, I
know. The last time I was in New Orleans, and we made a point of everywhere we went, and we only ate out. We were there for 3 days. And every restaurant for lunch or dinner, we had 9 different gumbos. And we were, by the end, just highly critical of this one, and very,
Right.
we were aficionados about this one. And this one was a
so
little
much more.
too smoky, and this was a little too thick. And I'll tell you, and this is not an advertisement, but Emerald's in the quarter was by far,
really,
far and away, the most exquisite specimen. And I'm not kidding, man. It blew us out of the water. And it may have been the fact that we also got the kids to try their first alligator ever. And so that was probably part of it. Like I said, context has everything to do with it. But so far as gumbos go, Emerald's, man. So you don't remember the name of this restaurant, but I need you to find a photograph and find what Google Maps says it was, because I need to go there, because if you were strapping yourself to the trough of gumbo, it's got to be worth it.
But the thing is, it was their gumbo of their whatever their special gumbo was. So I'll be curious if it's still around.
Isn't it funny how your stomach just kind of opens up when you have exquisite food? You're like, it's an afternoon. We're going to get some cocktails, and maybe I should probably have a little nosh, right? I should have a little nosh. But then once the nosh begins, if that nosh is excellent, you're like, I'm going to have another nosh, and yet another, and yet another.
And I kept doing it. And I knew that we had dinner later too, because we went up another restaurant in New Orleans that was recommended, and it was called Jacquemo's. Have you been to Jacquemo's?
It's really funny. Yeah, as you're saying this, I'm trying to find a way in this conversation to bring up Jacquemo's.
That's so funny.
I'm not kidding, because I want to talk about the alligator cheesecake.
I was gonna say the alligator cheesecake. Well, because you said alligator, and so the first thing I thought of was the alligator cheesecake.
Oh my God, Kismet, we're both fans of New Orleans. And if you are a fan of New Orleans and you haven't been to Jacquemo's, you're not a fan of New Orleans.
It's true.
It did take us a while to wait for Jacquemo's, who doesn't take reservations, right? So
you just have to show up.
We showed up. We were there for an hour and a half. We probably got a cocktail down the street. We did not. We ate in the dining room.
Yeah, you ate in the dining room. I've eaten at the bar and the dining room, but I've always wanted to eat in the truck. But I think that's the hardest table to get. So
I will say, their alligator, my first alligator of all the alligator I've eaten, and I actually genuinely love alligator. I find it to be a different protein than a lot of other things. And I do not think that it just tastes like chicken. I think it tastes like alligator. Alligator cheesecake was the most inventive thing I had had in a long, long time. But my God, so was that the thing that brought you to Jacquemo's? Because it was me.
No, it really wasn't. So when we were sitting at this bar called Coops, which is in the quarter. So a friend of ours in the city, their friend runs that bar. So we're like, oh, we'll go check it out. And then we were there, just happened to be talking with the bartender. But she had recommended, she's like, this is something that you need to do Tuesday night. You need to go see Rebirth. And then you need to go next door to Jacquemo's. How often do you find alligator cheesecake on a menu? So we sat at the bar, we ordered with alligator cheesecake and then like a fried chicken platter, which was also delicious. And then every time we're in New Orleans, I always recommend, I'm always like, we need to go to Jacquemo's. Like, you have to go.
The Jacquemo's has a fantastic menu. Their standards are all there. All the hits are played on the menu. They have a great jambalaya. I do love their gumbo. That thing that most surprised me is not only the alligator cheesecake, which astonished me and my wife, Jessica. That was the first thing we had as an appetizer. We shared it. I think we ordered another piece because you just can't get enough, and you can't believe that you just did this. And it's like you say, it's one of those things that you can't not get because it's there on the menu. You're like, what the hell is an alligator cheesecake? But what you don't order, the bread service. Do you remember the bread service at Jacquemo's?
No.
Okay. The cornbread that comes.
Oh, yes. The cornbread.
Oh, my God.
Cornbread.
The cornbread. So they take the cornbread, they take a skillet of scalded butter.
Yeah.
And they pour it over the cornbread and it sizzles. And you're like, oh, my God, you just created the biggest sinful bite that I'm about to have. I want to know if you have a worst travel food story.
So this is going to be like a weird, because I also just said that New Orleans was my favorite food story, but it's also my worst food story. For the longest time, we would go to New Orleans like every 6 months. So we would go for Jazz Fest, and then we would go again for like, it would be around Halloween. And like what they had was Voodoo Fest. New Orleans was packed. I don't think anyone knew how big that Voodoo Fest and the combination of Voodoo Fest and Halloween was going to be. And this is a couple years ago. And I think it was only like, it was like, it's still a newer festival that they were holding. And so we stayed where we normally stay, and we tried to go to all of our places that we would normally go, but like there was no food in New Orleans. There was nothing, like
What?
nothing.
Shocking.
Like every time you would walk into, I know it was shocking. Every restaurant we went into, they were like, things crossed off the menus. Like, we don't have this, we don't have this, we don't have this.
Wow.
And I just remember thinking like there was just nothing available. There was nothing. I remember we went to a restaurant, sat down, and we waited for 30 minutes and no one came. No one even said hi to us. And I know there was only one guy. And so I'm not even trying to like throw that guy under the bus. Like, he was stressed. It happened. I wait tables. Like, I get it. We were all service people, right? All industry people. And so we were sitting there and we were just kind of like, okay, it'll be fine. Like, it's fine. And so we like got up and left. Every restaurant we went to, it was like so much was 86. They were like, we don't have gumbo, we don't have jambalaya, we don't have like all of the big staples. They were completely out of. I remember we even walked all the way out. So like we were staying in the Marigny of like the quarter,
right,
like in that kind of area.
Mm-hmm.
We walked out towards like the Bywater because there was supposed to be this barbecue place that was like really great. And we got there and they had like they were like, we have chicken.
Wow.
I was like, well, guess we're having chicken.
You would think a place like New Orleans would scale, right? I mean, they have things like Jazz Fest. They have Mardi Gras. They have these festivals throughout the year. You would think that they would scale. And I guess in the beginning years of what's Voodoo Fest, that they just didn't think. How does a New Orleans city planner not think it's going to be popular?
Right. And it's, it's Halloween. So it was just I feel like it was a combination of these two things that like everywhere we went, there was just like nothing. There was no food.
Wow. When you talked about sitting at a restaurant and just basically being ignored by the staff, I had these flashbacks of Paris, and I have opinions about Paris, but I won't get into it. But what you're talking about is actually this symbiosis that the staff at the time had with the lack of food. They're like, we don't know what to do, and neither does the menu. So we're just going to ignore it.
Just ignore it. Just ignore it.
They had nothing. Away. They had nothing in their arsenal. They had to. That's very different than Paris. When you spend time in New Orleans, how do you pass the time between meals? Because I have a rough time.
I mean, that's a question that I feel like I have to ask myself every day. Like, it's not just New Orleans.
That's
like,
a good point. I'm at home. How do I pass the time between meals?
Right now?
I'm in Paris. How do I pass the time between meals?
Doesn't matter where
there's only so much Rodin you can look at.
Yeah, I mean, New Orleans, I feel like is a little bit different because you could grab like, you have breakfast and then you can get like oysters and Bloody Marys in between. And I feel like that's such a like kind of thing that we would do is like have your breakfast and then like a little oyster happy hour or something, whatever between meals. But then even then, like then lunch and then grabbing like beignets and coffee and then chilling in the park or just kind of wandering around. I feel like there's so much to do. And there's so much music in New Orleans, like on the streets, that if you just sit in a park, you can just enjoy like the sounds of New Orleans.
That's a great response that I didn't actually expect or think through because I feel the same exact way. So what do you do between meals in New Orleans? Well, I eat.
Yeah, I eat a lot. I'm a big eater.
The thing that makes New Orleans unique is you don't really have to try that hard because yes, you can grab a snack, but you can grab that snack with a soundtrack. Stephanie, we've reached the point in the show where I ask you to fill in 5 blanks. You good?
I'm nervous, but I'm ready.
Don't be nervous. This is a fun thing. Blank will be my last meal.
Oh, that's hard. Mac and cheese.
I cook blank to impress people.
Steak. Oh, wait, can I have a second answer? I have 2.
Yeah.
Either steak, like a steak dinner, or like spaghetti carbonara.
Would you ever consider both?
Yes.
Absolutely. Now, would that be steak with a side of carbonara, or would that be carbonara with an entree of steak?
Yeah, probably steak with a side of carbonara. That would be how I would like menu it. If I were making a menu, that would be how I would place it.
Okay, so this next one, this is where I think you challenged yourself.
Okay.
I cook blank to comfort myself.
Oh.
Boom.
It's fettuccine, probably fettuccine Alfredo. Like I'll make an Alfredo sauce. There's a pasta theme happening here. You can sense that I have a thing for pasta.
And what you're referring to is yet another form of mac and cheese, are you not?
I mean, true. Pasta and cheese, a cheese sauce, pasta. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that question often trips somebody up because they're like, well, I just told you what I was going to eat before they kill me.
Right. Yeah.
That's when I need the most comfort.
When I think of like mac and cheese is like with a really good like bechamel like sauce. And even then I was thinking like if it had like a jalapeno breadcrumb kind of thing going on, like a spicy mac and cheese.
I find mac and cheese is one of those canvases, those of late, let's say the last decade and a half, where people just kind of gone nuts with it, where they if it's mac and cheese, well, I can add, like you said, jalapenos into the breadcrumbs, or I can toss some lobster in there, make it a bacon coated mac and cheese, or deep fry hunks of it after it cools down. Like that's also mac and cheese. That's mac and cheese. But when you say I'm going to have a fettuccine Alfredo, that's like, it brings it back to a purer format.
If I were to say the difference between comfort food and like my last meal, like I would still want my last meal to have something. I want it to be comforting, but I also want it to have a kick.
I want my last meal to be a 72 course affair.
Oh, that's also true. That's fair.
I'm going to try to delay it. I don't think people like to admit this because they spend, a lot of money. They drop major coin on some, 16 course, 3 Michelin star chef's menu.
Right.
And you get to course 8 and you're like, oh,
there's more.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
I just spent $475 on this night and we're having an anniversary, whatever. And I can't do it. Yeah.
I lucked out because it was like my friend worked at like a really nice restaurant in the city, and it was his birthday. And so he invited all of us out, and that was oddly one of the cheapest meals I've also ever had. But because I'm with you, like, I don't know if I could justify spending that much money on on that kind of dinner, especially because everything, comes, it's always like small, like, all these little things. And it's like, I just want to eat. Like, I just want to eat. Like, I don't want to have to worry about the next thing that comes out. I just like food to me is also something that's like, it's social, and so it's like, I like the food to come out and then everyone can eat and talk and like have wine and like, but it feels something you do with family and friends, as opposed to like eating and then sitting and waiting for your next course to come out. Like fine dining to me is also something that feels very strange.
Well, let me tell you something. In an ironic twist, I've also had one of the best eating experiences where it was very, very expensive. And that's not what I'm trying to tout. Jessica and I were in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And we did a Kobe beef tasting.
Oh yeah.
But it was a hot pot affair. So it's, one of these tables that have the cauldron in the middle, and the different soups on either side of the cauldron. And we were brought, course after course of the most thinly. And by the way, I'm not a beef guy necessarily. I'm definitely not a steak guy. And I very seldom, right now, I'm not even eating meat, I'm just eating fish. But in previous lives, or for special occasions, I will go ahead and eat the mammals. We're doing this Kobe beef tasting, and I had Kobe beef exactly once in my life. And we were like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. We knew that it wasn't cheap. We knew there was going to be an adventure. And yet both of us have had that experience where you go into a multi-course meal a little bit reticent because you don't want to get to course 8 of 20 and go, oh man, I'm full, falling asleep in the soup. And my God, I will say that it was completely worth it. And I was hungry for dessert at the end. And by the way, it was not a beef dessert. The one food I would erase from the earth is blank.
Shrimp.
What?
I hate shrimp. I hate it.
Oh my God.
I know. I knew it was going to be a little bit of I don't like shrimp. I do not mind if shrimp is in stuff. I'm not that picky, but I do not like eating shrimp, like shrimp cocktail, just shrimp in general. Like when I like shrimp tails are like, it all freaks me out. I don't like it.
I don't think of shrimp as a divisive food. However, I respect people's likes and dislikes. I have to ask this question. Is it the creep factor, the exoskeleton, or the taste or texture?
It's a texture thing.
Texture thing. How do you feel about lobster?
I'm fine with lobster. It's okay. I know. You're
gonna have to tell me more. How do you feel about scallops?
I actually don't know if I've had scallops. No.
I don't think you would like a scallop, not if it's cooked right.
Right. I would eat scallops. Here's the thing. I'll try anything. Like I like snails. Like I've eaten like escargot. I like oysters in all forms, like raw oysters. I like mussels. But I tolerate lobster. Like I don't love lobster. I would never order lobster. I would never order lobster.
Wow.
I like crab more than I like lobster.
Okay, though I'll hand it to you. So the texture of shrimp, that makes you unique. Blank is for dinner tonight.
And I don't know. It's funny because it's Monday, and Monday is my grocery shopping day. So I have to go to the grocery store. It might be a leftover kind of day. And I did make like a sausage and pepper deal last night with like a rigatoni. And I'll probably eat that for dinner tonight.
Sweet. Because you and I both know, and everybody listening really does know, that pasta the next day, that's going to taste awesome.
It's even better.
Well, Stephanie, this has been fantastic.
Yeah, this is fun. My little trip down memory lane.
If I can offer someone that journey down memory lane, that's all I can ask for, particularly if it's as delicious as you laid out. My God, Memphis, New Orleans, just two spectacular places to eat.
And now I'm hungry because, I'm in that in between of breakfast and lunch.
Now it's time for oyster happy hour, no?
Yeah, it's time for the oyster happy hour. Gotta get my Bloody Marys and my oysters.
Okay, see you, Steph.
All right, bye.
To all of you wonderful, intelligent listeners out there, remember to subscribe to this show, follow me on Instagram, and find our books with your favorite seller. Those are One Pan to Rule Them All, Kiss My Casserole, How to Cook Anything in Your Dutch Oven, Chinese Street Food, and the forthcoming Off the Top of My Head, Recipes, Rants, and Ravings of an American Cook Obsessing in Barcelona. Until next time, stay saucy and eat well.